Ulysses, Part 3, Nostos, Episode 16, Eumaeus. The time is 1 in the morning. The scene is shelter. We're on the way to a cabman's shelter on the Quays before we decide we need to actually start walking home. The colour? There is none. Technique is narrative, old. Correspondences include Skin the Goat is Eumaeus. The sailor is Ulysses. Pseudangelos and Corley is equal to Melanthius. The science or art is navigation, and the meaning is the ambush at home. The organ is the nerves, and the symbol, sailors. Other characters, we have Corley and various different cab people, and the thoughts of those dead and alive, personally known or famous. Plot. Preparatory to anything else, Mr. Bloom brushed off the greater bulk of the shavings and handed Stephen the hat and ashplant and bucked him up generally in orthodox Samaritan fashion, which he very badly needed. It's time to go home. Bloom is painfully sober to Stephen's slowly recovering drunkenness. As they go to wait for a cab, they encounter Corley, another refugee from Dubliners. He's looking for a loan of a few pennies, and Stephen basically offers him his own job in the school at the school in Dalkey, and noting that he also, like Corley, has no lodgings. Wittingly or unwittingly, Corley also twists the knife and looks for Stephen to ask Bloom to ask Boylan for a job as a sandwich board man. They talk of Stephen's father a while and arrive at the cabman's stand. There they talk to the red-bearded sailor, D.B. Murphy of Carrigaloe, and hear the tales of his many voyages. Bloom picks up the sporting pink, or the last edition, of the Telegraph and sees plenty of errors in the description of Poor Paddy Dignam's funeral. We learn that for all the talk of food throughout the novel, Stephen has not eaten in the past day. Bloom begins to calculate and decides to take the young man back to his place, hoping it won't annoy Molly. They talk of music. Stephen even sings a little, and they slope back up the hill to Eccles Street. The sailor stared at him heavily from a pair of drowsy, baggy eyes, rather bunged up from excessive use of booze, preferably good old Hollands and water. "You know Simon Dedalus?" he asked at length. "I've heard of him," Stephen said. Mr. Bloom was all at sea for a moment, seeing the others evidently eavesdropping too. "He's Irish," the seaman bold affirmed, staring still in much the same way and nodding. "All Irish." "All too Irish," Stephen rejoined. As for Mr. Bloom, he could neither make head or tail of the whole business, and was just asking himself what possible connection when the sailor of his own accord turned to the other occupants of the shelter. Nettled not a little by L. Bloom, as it incorrectly stated, and the line of bitched type, but tickled to death simultaneously by C.P. McCoy and Stephen Dedalus, B.A., who were conspicuous, needless to say, by their total absence, to say nothing of Mackintosh. L. Bloom pointed it out to his companion, B.A., engaged in stifling another yawn, half nervousness, not forgetting the usual crop of nonsensical howlers of misprints. So now, for the first time since we left the butchers in Calypso, Ulysses is actually on his voyage home. Here he is headed deliberately on the way, rather than avoiding it. Unlike in the original, he is accompanied by Telemachus of the book, Stephen, for whom he has become symbolically the father. This gets interesting, as he shows Stephen a picture of Molly from 8 years back. There's a suggestion that this is in relation to getting Stephen to help progress her singing career beyond Boylan, and in doing so displace Boylan in her affections. While this is the parallel with the Eumaeus section of the Odyssey, where Ulysses slays his wife's suitors. However, to my mind, this is the reverse of Oedipus, the father inviting in the surrogate son into his mother's affections. Stephen's already clearing his own house before this, though, as he's clearly decided he can no longer go on living with Mulligan, or, for that matter, work for DC. Though drunk, Stephen has cast from him two associations that have been holding him back, though Corley may not be a reliable choice to take over the teaching role. The piece in the paper I think to be pretty significant as Bloom looks back on the day, and arguably a reading of it could be that famous line of Marx about history happening twice. The first time as tragedy, the second time as farce. The report of the tragic funeral is indeed comic, and it manages to keep those that were there, gives names to the nameless, and misnames one who is actually trying to keep the record straight. A strong point to a purpose of this novel, to explore the subjective experiences of a single day.
And long, still towards that twilight comes love's old song.